You are listening to the Navigating Adult ADHD podcast, where it's all about education, support, and coaching for adults with ADHD. I'm your host, Zena, a late diagnosed ADHDer, here to help you unpack the challenges, frustrations, and the positive side of living with ADHD. With my no BS approach, I'll help you to better understand your unique ADHD brain and how you can work with it to feel better, increase your self-confidence, improve your relationships, and ultimately achieve your goals. Hello, my friend. Welcome back to Navigating Adult ADHD podcast. Let's just take a breath. All right, I am so happy to be here with you, my friend. Today we are going to talk about when you are too much. So how many times have you heard things like, you're too loud, or you're too sensitive, you're too intense, you're too talkative, you're too dramatic, you're too emotional, you're too energetic? The other day, I was coaching a woman whose ex-husband had spent years telling her that she's too much for most people. And when they went out, he would actually give her a criteria for who she should be when they were out with other people. For example, like, don't talk about yourself, and don't be so intense, and don't drink, because when you drink alcohol, you become like more intense, more talkative, more, too much. And so she'd be having a conversation with someone and then listening to her brain tell her all of the things that she should be doing. And maybe you can relate to that. I know I can. Where you're like thinking, should I be looking in their left eye or their right eye? Should I now ask them a question? Should I talk about the weather? I've got this example, but I probably don't want to share that because I don't want to make it about me. Like, you're in your head so much with all of these should. What should I do? What shouldn't I do? Blah, 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 right? Like, it's intense. And maybe you grew up with a parent who was always telling you to stop being so full on because obviously you're being too much, too intense, too dramatic, too whatever. Or maybe you had a partner who was always telling you how you were too sensitive and how you always took things so personally. For me, I had this best friend in my 20s who was always telling me that I was too dramatic. She would always tell me about how I was being so dramatic, and then she would laugh about it. But inside, I felt so much shame because, on the one hand, I wasn't trying to be dramatic. I was actually just being myself. And then on the other hand, when I was being me, to her, I was being too dramatic. So therefore, I obviously, wasn't being socially acceptable, air quotes. So obviously, I wasn't meant to be that way. I was not humaning correctly. So that just became another thing to beat myself up for, right? It became another thing that was wrong with me, right? When I'm too dramatic, obviously I shouldn't be that way. I'm bad, effectively. So whatever your flavor of too much is today, firstly, my friend, I want you to know you are not alone. We hear these things so often as adults with ADHD, and it can be really hard because when people say this, it can cause us to feel so much shame. It can feel terrible. Now, shame is that feeling that there is something wrong with me, that I am bad, okay? So let's break this down. When someone says to you, you're too intense, and I want you to replace that with whatever your flavor is that you will often hear, okay? So when someone says you're too intense. Oh my gosh, incense as in like those smelly sticks. Now my brain's gone off on a tangent. How ADHD. All right, let me bring it back in. When someone says that you are too intense and then you feel bad about yourself and how you're behaving, what generally happens is you start to think that you shouldn't be that way, that you need to change. And then you beat yourself up for it. You feel ashamed of that. You then try to be who they want you to be. You try to be less intense. Maybe you stay quiet. Maybe you hold back what you were going to say. Basically, you edit and alter yourself to try and fit into this imaginary mold. So, when I was telling my friend about this accident that I had seen on my way to work, and she responded with, "You're so dramatic," I might bite back with something like, "No, I'm not." But I'd still be thinking to myself, you know what? I shouldn't be like that. I shouldn't be so dramatic. Obviously, my level of drama is a negative thing. It's a problem. So then I'd try to be less animated in a conversation with people. I'd try to be more agreeable, less excitable. Sometimes I'd just stay quiet and not speak up at all because I didn't want to say or do the wrong thing. All of that to say, I became less me in order to be somebody else's version of socially acceptable. So when you think I'm too much, you become less of yourself. You dilute yourself in order to be more appealing to someone else. Now, when I say that, I just want you to kind of think, is that really what I want to do? Because when I hear it, I'm like, ew, I don't want to do that. Okay? And I appreciate that may not be where you're at. Okay? So let's have a little play with this. When you're being too much for who? Too much for your mother-in-law? Too much for that judgy parent at school drop-off? Is it too much for that friend who's always questioning everything you do? Or is it too much for that stranger sitting next to you at a coffee shop who looks at you when you get loud and animated? And what is the right amount? So whatever it is, whatever the situation, right? It's going to be what that person thinks is acceptable. So it could be your mother-in-law thinks that you should be more like her. The judgy parent at school drop-off thinks that you should be more like her. That friend who questions everything you do thinks you should be more like her. That random stranger in a coffee shop, she thinks you should be more like her. Essentially, these people, they want us to be less of ourselves so that they can be more comfortable. Be less emotional because I can't handle my own emotions and yours make me really uncomfortable. Be less dramatic because, I can't be that dramatic and you're making me uncomfortable. Be less intense because I feel uncomfortable. Be less loud or less sensitive because I'm feeling uncomfortable. Right? So when people say that, we make ourselves uncomfortable. We edit and alter ourselves. We dilute ourselves and we become more uncomfortable instead. Ouch. So let's talk about this imaginary mold that we try to fit into when we believe that we are too much. So society has a bunch of unspoken rules for what is considered, air quotes, socially acceptable. I want you all to know that when I say air quotes, I literally do them with my hands. That's how dramatic I am, my friends. So society has this bunch of rules, right? Mainly unspoken rules for what's considered socially acceptable. And we've been taught or conditioned to follow these rules. For example, when you leave your house, you should wear clothing. When you finish school, you should either get a full-time job or you should go to university. When you're in a cafe, you should not raise your voice. All of these rules are made up, okay? Now, sometimes there are laws that go alongside them. For example, if you are nude in public, you might get arrested, okay? Again, even those laws are all made up. But if you choose to be a nudist, this is not a moral issue. It does not make you a bad person. If you choose to go to university, or choose not to go to university rather, and to just drop out of school and start your own bakery, that is not a moral issue. It doesn't make you a good or a bad person. Okay? Being dramatic, intense, sensitive, loud, whatever your flavor of too much is, that is not a moral issue, my friend. It doesn't make you a good or a bad person because you're too dramatic or too intense or whatever you are. Right? The problem isn't you. The problem is someone else's idea of who you should be. Okay? When you are dramatic, when you are intense, when you are loud, when you are all of that, it just makes you you. And you don't need to change who you are to make others comfortable. Okay? You simply need to be comfortable with being who you are. So let me explain. Yesterday, my partner and I, we were out walking. And we were walking on some walking tracks, and there's like a bunch of kind of rivery things, like waterways, shall we say, and some kind of like big openings where you can see like ducks and pukekos and different birds on this water. And so we're walking along, and I am describing to him, and there's people, going past. I'm describing to him in great detail, using my hands and my arms and my expressions and all manner of different noises, right? Something that I had seen the ducks do on our walk. So I'm like reenacting this whole duck scenario whilst we're walking along, other people coming past, etc. And at one point he says to me, "Your drama is on point today." And I replied with, "I know, right? I should be getting paid for this shit." So anytime he or someone else tells me that I'm too dramatic, I now respond with something along the lines of, "Yeah, I am. Isn't it awesome?" Why? Why do I do that when I used to be so ashamed of how dramatic I was? Why? Because today I love my dramatic side. I am obsessed with how dramatic I am. Like, it's one of my favorite things about myself, and I love it in other people. I do. I love it in other people. It makes for the most fun conversations. So I want you to think, what is something you like about yourself? Okay? Just one thing you like about yourself. You can pick anything. So maybe it's you like how obsessed you are with cats or with neon colors. Okay, speaking from experience. Or maybe you like your curly hair. Or maybe you like your eye color. Now, take that thing that you feel good about, and I want you to imagine somebody else basically taking a shit on it. All right? So here's what I mean. Your obsession with cats is just so weird. You shouldn't wear neon colors because it's not professional. You should probably wear more black and white. Or somebody said to you, "Your curly hair is just so gross," right? Or you should wear contact lenses because your eyes are not a very nice color, right? If somebody said that to you about that thing that you had solid confidence in, you would think that they are crazy or weird or wrong. You'd just brush it off, right? When somebody says to me, I'm not really a cat person. Like, do you really think you should talk so much about cats? I'm like, yes, I'm obsessed. I love them. We're obviously not going to work out as friends, right? Like, it just doesn't bother me. If anything, I'll often laugh about it. So when somebody does that, when somebody says something negative or, makes a criticism about something that you've got solid confidence in, that you like about yourself, that you're really good with, you just don't care, right? It's not going to bother you because you already feel good about it. So the issue with someone saying you're too much is that some part of us is believing that about ourselves, right? And maybe it's, I don't want them to think I'm too much. I don't want my coworkers to think I'm too sensitive. I don't like, being so intense. I don't like the way people respond when I'm so dramatic. Now, my friend, you do not need to change who you are at all. Okay? What if instead of trying to be who they want you to be, you decided to enjoy being who you are? What if Every time people said to you, you're too dramatic, you're too much, you're too sensitive, what if it didn't bother you at all? In fact, what if you embraced it and you actually enjoyed those things about yourself? What do you want to believe about yourself? What do you want to believe? For me, I want to believe that I am dramatic and I love it. I want to believe that I am too much for some people and they just are not my people at all. I want to believe that I'm sensitive and the world needs more sensitive people. Right? I am. I'm super sensitive and I love sensitive people. Right? I also want to believe that intense conversations are my favorite. I love intense conversations, right? Another belief I have is that I love all of my too muchness because it makes me me. It makes me who I am, like this unique recipe I've got. The problem is never my too muchness, okay? The problem is never your too muchness. One of the secrets that I have learned over the years is that being more of who you are is like the secret sauce. Like being more of who you are, right? Instead of editing and diluting yourself, being more of who you are. It's how we meet really good friends. It's how we have incredible conversations and wild, cool, crazy experiences. It's how we attract the best fit clients or customers. Being more of who we are is how we create an authentic life, an authentic business, and it's way less effort and way more fun. Instead of trying to change who we are to fit somebody else's idea of acceptable, what if we decided to embrace who we are? What if we decided to let go of who we think we are supposed to be and instead embrace ourselves? Right? Now, if this is something you struggle with, then I want to invite you to join ADHD Home. Okay, this is our brand new membership. And inside ADHD Home, we have a course that is called How to Coach Yourself. And that course will help you to change the way that you think and feel about your flavor of too much so that you can actually enjoy being who you are. My friend, the problem isn't you. The problem is someone else's idea of who they think you should be. The world doesn't need you to be less, I promise. It just needs you to be you. All right. Huge love, my friend. I'll talk to you next week. If you are loving what you're learning here on the podcast, but you still feel like your ADHD is holding you back, I can help. Using evidence-based coaching tools and my own experiences, I'll help you to manage your emotions and feel better, to increase your productivity, grow your self-confidence, and create the life that you were meant for. Visit zenajones.com/thrive and schedule an ADHD support session to get started.